Hello YouTube! I'm a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition DM, and I have been going over different parts of Pathfinder in effort to learn, understand, and react to the ways that it's different from 5e. Today we're going to be jumping into skills. Throughout this entire series, you've all been commenting and teaching me the things that my D&D 5e brain prevents me from understanding. And I truly appreciate all of you for it. Please keep the knowledge coming in the comments. Not only does it help me, but it also helps the video, which you could do even further by hitting a little like and maybe a subscribe. So from what I can tell, there's a lot of D&D overlap in this, meaning that a lot of the skills are the same. Stealth, survival, athletics, and a lot more. What the skills seem to be doing differently is showcasing better the things that you can do with those skills by way of actions. There is much greater depth in any one skill page than there ever was trying to learn a skill in 5th edition. There are specific actions that can be taken whether you're trained in a skill or even if you're untrained in a skill. On top of that, there are general actions that you can do with all skills whether you're trained or not. Although, before we dive into it, I do need to take a minute to appreciate D&D for a second. I've taught a lot of people how to play D&D, and one of the most overwhelming things that they go through is figuring out what their actions are on their turn. They have everything on their sheet from their class, from their race, from their background, and then there are just these actions that you can take that are nowhere. Sometimes people have a nice little graphic that can be shared, other times people build it into their virtual tabletops. But for the most part, trying to remember everything is a very daunting task until eventually you get used to it. Pathfinder said, fuck that. There's actions for everything. There's actions for almost every single skill and multiple actions at that, on top of the actions that we just went through in the last 2 videos. There's a lot going on. I've been doing this for 7 years, and even I'm a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of things that you have to know. Anyway, I have a lot to talk about, so we're just gonna dive right in. Acrobatics. Acrobatics measures your ability to perform tasks requiring coordination and grace. When you use the escape basic action, you can use your acrobatics modifier instead of your unarmed attack modifier. I don't really have much to talk about except to gush over the fact that you can basically punch your way out of a grapple, which isn't even related to this skill at all. I just think that it's really cool that you can either use acrobatics, you can use athletics, which we'll get to eventually, or you can use an unarmed attack. And I think that's really cool. Balance. You move across a narrow surface or uneven ground, attempting an acrobatics check against its balance DC. You are flat-footed while on a narrow surface or uneven ground. I play Leo, a high elf rogue, and we're fighting in the middle of this town festival, and there are these little confetti streamers that are hanging from building to building. I managed to acrobatics my way on top of some of the roofs, and I want to transition from one roof to the next so that I can have a better vantage on the thing that we're fighting. And so I try to channel my inner Legolas as best as I can and walk across these streamers. It seems like an impossible feat, but my DM gives me a chance to do it, and I failed. I didn't do it. I wasn't cool. I fell on my ass. But that's what this is, and that's really cool. It's really strange to me that the fail states are as open-ended as they are. If you fail, you either maintain the balance and lose your action, or you fall and end your turn. What dictates whether you should fall or not fall? If the critical fail is the latter half of the fail, why would you do that? Why would you want to have the same effects as the critical fail? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Tumble Through. You stride up to your speed. During this movement, you can try and move through the space of one enemy. Attempt an acrobatics check against the enemy's reflex DC as soon as you try to enter its space. You can tumble through using climb, fly, swim, or another action instead of stride in the appropriate environment. I don't think there's any official rules for this specifically other than you just can't move through the space of an enemy creature. In my games, we basically do the same exact thing as this rule. There's just a grapple check if you're trying to move through someone's space that won't let you go through. I think it's really cool that you're punished for failing, but I'm surprised you're not punished worse for a crit fail. Failing just preventing you from moving through a space, and critical failing triggering reactions as if you had moved seems like a way more sensible path to follow. It also seems far more consistent with the way that things have been structured up to this point. Maneuver in flight. You try a difficult maneuver while flying. Attempt an acrobatics check. The GM determines what maneuvers are possible, but they rarely allow you to move farther than your fly speed. As a player, I am doing everything in my power to negotiate a further fly speed. But as a GM, I'm gonna learn everything that I can about aerodynamics to make sure that no player ever gets an inch out of me without the coolest reason. I like the idea of being blown off course or backwards or just getting creative with a negative effect of failure. Squeeze. You can contort yourself to squeeze through a space so small you can barely fit through. This action is for exceptionally small spaces. Many tight spaces are difficult terrain that you can move through more quickly and without a check. 1 minute for every 10 feet? Oh my god, I feel claustrophobic just reading this. I don't like it. I haven't even read the crit fail and I can already tell it's gonna make me feel icky. I do appreciate that you can get yourself unstuck so long as you don't crit fail. Arcana. Arcana measures how much you know about arcane magic and creatures. This is Arcana and 5e. There's not much going on here. However, what's really cool is what's next. Borrow an arcane spell. If you're an arcane spellcaster who prepares from a spell book, you can attempt to prepare a spell from someone else's spellbook. The GM sets the DC for this check based on the spell's level and rarity. It's typically a bit easier than learning a spell. This is so cool! I don't know the answer, and I likely won't until I start diving into the classes, but I am really fascinated to see how all the different classes prepare their spells now. In 5th edition, only wizards have spell books. And I guess tome warlocks too, but that doesn't really count. I'm curious how spellbooks play into all of the different classes and what classes can actually utilize this action. Athletics. Athletics allows you to perform deeds of physical prowess. When you use the escape basic action, you can use your athletics modifier instead of your unarmed attack modifier. With the exception of being able to punch your way out, escaping a grapple works exactly the same in 5th edition. You can use either your acrobatics or your athletics to escape. I'm really curious if they just took inspiration from 5e, or maybe it's just my lack of knowledge about OG Pathfinder and 3.5 D&D. Forced movement. The shove action can force a creature to move. When an effect forces you to move, or if you start falling, the distance you move is defined by the effect that moved you, not by your speed. Because you're not acting to move, this doesn't trigger reactions triggered by movement. And this is just how it works in 5e as well. The falling bit is new though. I'm pretty sure that in 5e, no matter what happens, when you're forced to fall, you fall until you hit the ground. But the way that this is written makes me think that you're Wile E. Coyote until the start of your turn, just hovering in the air, only having moved how far you've been pushed. Climb. You move up, down, or across an incline. Unless it's particularly easy, you must attempt an athletics check. You're flat-footed unless you have a climb speed. I like that they add a detriment to climbing without a climb speed that isn't just difficult terrain. This feels like I'm reading a word problem. I don't like this. I don't like this at all. This feels so much more complicated than it needs to be. Force open. Using your body, a lever, or some other tool, you attempt to forcefully open a door, window, container, or heavy gate. With a high enough result, you can even smash through walls. Without a crowbar, prying something open takes a -2 item penalty to the athletics check to force open. Thankfully, the crowbar is mentioned, so I get to talk about Leo again. I've been playing this campaign for a couple of years now, and I've had a crowbar since day one. I have used it maybe once in 11 levels across 2 years worth of on and off gameplay. I don't think that mechanically adding a -2 without it really makes it more viable, but I like the fact that there is incentive to use it when you need it. Grapple. Requirements. You have at least one free hand or have your target grappled or restrained. Your target isn't more than one size larger than you. You attempt to grab a creature or object with your free hand. Attempt an athletics check against the target's fortitude DC. You can grapple a target you already have grabbed or restrained without having a free hand. I actually really like how grapple works. There's so much going on here, but grabbed is still super useful for a success and restrained even more so. High jump. Use stride and then make a vertical leap and attempt a DC 30 athletics check to increase the height of your jump. If you didn't stride at least 10 feet, you automatically fail your check. This DC might be increased or decreased due to the situation as determined by the GM. Hot diggity damn, 30? That's like a lot. At least D&D brain is telling me that that's like a lot. Why 8 feet? That's such a weird number. I thought these games all ran in 5 feet intervals. Why not just round up? Also, is critical success a 40, or is it still just 10 above the DC set by the DM? I'm very confused at the stipulation of the jump and the success states increasing the height of your jump. Long jump. You stride and make a horizontal leap and attempt an athletics check to increase the length of your jump. The DC of the athletics check is equal to the total distance in feet that you're attempting to move during your leap. So you'd need to succeed a DC 20 check to leap 20 feet. You can't leap farther than your speed. If you didn't stride at least 10 feet, or if you attempt to jump in a different direction than your original stride, you automatically fail your check. I don't know if I like that this is 2 actions, though, unless, no, wait, this is an activity. So this is a stride and a jump built into one, but no, wait, it's still 2 actions. You're still spending 1 action to stride and 1 action to jump. I thought that I was finally understanding, but I don't know anymore. Wait, how long can you jump if this is being increased? Right, it's 10 feet or 15 feet if your move speed is more. Oh my god, this is such a drastic difference. And the fail becomes hilarious if you're really going balls to the walls. Shove. You push a creature away from you. Attempt an athletics check against your target's fortitude DC. This is pretty straightforward, but what I'm more interested in is these. This is just straight up bullying. You push, and then you get free movement to get back in their face. This is actually a pretty big departure from 5e. One of the biggest benefits to shoving a creature in 5e is that you can knock it prone. What this does on the inverse is now you're prone if you critically fail. I wonder if there's a replacement. I wonder what the meta is for just pushing people. Swim. You propel yourself through water. If you must breathe air and you're being submerged in water, you must hold your breath each round. If you fail to hold your breath, you begin to drown. Okay. We're gonna take a really quick jaunt into the world of drowning and suffocation because, oh my god, drowning and suffocation. You can hold your breath for a number of rounds equal to 5 plus your constitution modifier. This is so much less than 5e. 5e is 1 minute plus a number of minutes equal to your constitution modifier. Minutes. What? Pathfinder is at minimum 30 seconds. Reduce your remaining air by 1 round at the end of each of your turns, or by 2 if you attacked or cast spells that turn. This is terrifying, but really helps to make sense of the rules. You also lose 1 round worth of air each time you are critically hit or critically fail a save against a damaging effect. Holy shit, this is brutal! If you speak, including casting spells with verbal components or activating items with command components, you lose all remaining air. Fuck spellcasters then. When you run out of air, you fall unconscious and start suffocating. You can't recover from being unconscious and must attempt a DC 20 fortitude save at the end of each of your turns. DC 20? Holy shit, drowning is unforgiving. On a failure, you take 1d10 damage, and on a critical failure, you die. You can just die if you won't fuck up the first roll? What are these rules? How do you even get saved? On each check after the first, the DC increases by 5 and the damage by 1d10. These increases are cumulative. Oh my god. Drowning doesn't fuck around at all. Once your access to air is restored, you stop suffocating and are no longer unconscious, unless you're at 0 hit points. Well, at the very least, it just means you need air to not die. Okay, going back to swimming. If you end your turn in water and haven't succeeded at a swim action that turn, you sink 10 feet or get moved by the current. Oh, wow, this is actually really cool. It's a lot like maintaining your fly. These are brutal. I knew that swimming and water combat in 5e was rough, but this feels like avoid at all costs kind of scenario. Such slow speed and potential to drown so easily. Trip. Requirements. You have at least 1 hand free. Your target can't be more than 1 size larger than you. I'm gonna be real with you guys. I've never tripped anyone with my hands. I've tripped people with my feet, but I've never tripped someone with my hands. So for this to say that I need a free hand is very weird. But I guess this is also the concept of fighting. So like, right, maybe like some MMA moves like you gotta like put the foot behind their leg and then push. Okay, fine. But even then, you could do that with a weapon in your hand, okay? You try to knock a creature to the ground. Attempt an athletics check against the target's reflex DC. Again, there's not much to write home about, but these? 1d6 damage for being knocked prone? I love that. Also the karmic retribution for critically failing. Disarm. Requirements. You have at least 1 hand free. The target can't be more than 1 size larger than you. Huh. I'm not too sure how I feel about this having a size requirement. But honestly, every single time I've thought about disarming someone, in 5e, it's something only a Battlemaster fighter can do with a maneuver, and it's always done with a weapon attack. So for this to require a free hand and not a weapon strike is a little weird to me. I wonder if there's anything for classes that allow you to do this with a weapon strike as opposed to a free hand. You try to knock something out of a creature's grasp. Attempt an athletics check against the target's reflex DC. I kinda missed the contested checks. Anyway, we're here for these. The success state almost seems better than the crit success state, or at least I feel it would more often be useful. If you can negate the attack entirely by losing the weapon, that's wonderful. But more often than not, I feel like you're going to knock the weapon out of their hands, they'd action to pick it up and have 2 more attacks. But giving them a -2 to all attacks that turn seems pretty big. So you're either getting a -2 to everything or having to use an action to pick your sword back up. Crafting. You can use this skill to create, understand, and repair items. Hey there, remember me? I'm that guy who really fucking hates artisan tools in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. And this, it feels like a truly wonderful way to replace them. Repair. You spend 10 minutes attempting to fix a damaged item, placing the item on a stable surface and using the repair kit with both hands. You can't repair a destroyed item. I'm really looking forward to see how often things break in Pathfinder. I feel like in 5e it doesn't happen all that often, and even then you have mending for most of that. That's a whole lot of HP to repair, holy shit. I bet wizards wish they were being handled by a legendary crafter, oh my god. Craft. You make an item from raw materials. You need the alchemical crafting skill feat to create alchemical items, the magical crafting skill feat to create magic items, and the snare crafting feat to create snares. Snares though, man, I wish snares were more useful. Or at least I wish I had seen them being more useful so I have a better understanding of how to use them. How many times I've had a hunting trap or a bear trap or the snare spell and just never really had a good opportunity to use it. If your attempt to create the item is successful, you expend the raw materials you supplied. You could pay the remaining portion of the item's price in materials to complete the item immediately, or you could spend additional downtime days working on it. For each additional day you spend, reduce the value of materials you need to expend to complete the item. I really don't think that I'm a fan of this, because if you're just going to be paying full price to have something made, why not just buy it and save the time? If anything, the one redeeming thing about crafting in 5e is that you spend half the price to just make it with some time. Not huge on the crit fail. I don't want to take percentages of anything, even in rare circumstances. Just make it half. Identify alchemy. You can identify the nature of an alchemical item with 10 minutes of testing using alchemist's tools. If your attempt is interrupted in any way, you must start over. Oh, this is identify but for potions. Deception. You can trick and mislead others using disguises, lies, and other forms of subterfuge. Create a diversion. With a gesture, a trick, or some distracting words, you create a diversion that draws creatures' attention elsewhere. One of the most difficult things for me as a beginner DM was when players tried to intimidate, deceive, or persuade enemies in combat. I didn't know what to do, how to do it, or what that meant. And a lot of the times, I felt like they shouldn't even try because of how hostile creatures were. Thankfully, Pathfinder has a number of different conditions for the different temperaments a creature can have towards a person. On top of that, it has actions like these. It makes all of those things that I had trouble coming up with on the fly have actual rule sets. Attempt a single deception check and compare it to the perception DC of the creatures whose attention you're trying to divert. Whether or not you succeed, creatures you attempt to divert gain a +4 circumstance bonus to their perception DCs against your attempts to create a diversion for 1 minute. I think it's really cool and a wonderful thing to have in the arsenal of someone trying to play a deceptive character. Impersonate. You create a disguise and pass yourself off as someone you are not. Assembling a convincing disguise takes 10 minutes and requires a disguise kit, but a simpler, quicker disguise might do the job if you're not trying to imitate a specific individual. One of the things that I've come to enjoy about the way that I'm learning about Pathfinder is I'm learning it from a perspective without magic. Disguise self has the potential to ruin a disguise kit. It doesn't matter. What matters is that someone without disguise self has the opportunity to do this at the same level of the spell. If you attempt to directly interact with someone while disguised, the GM rolls a secret deception check for you against that creature's perception DC instead. The secret checks are back. I really love the idea that they just get to focus on what they're doing and do it how they want to without knowing what the role is. They don't have the opportunity to get cold feet. They don't have the opportunity to be overconfident. They don't have to play up to a low roll or a high roll. There's no pressure. They just get to do what they envisioned. I actually really like the fail states. If you fail, you're still disguised, but it fails. But if you crit fail, it can tell even more so. Lie. You try to fool someone with an untruth. Doing so takes at least one round or longer if the lie is elaborate. Elaborate or highly unbelievable lies are much harder to get a creature to believe than simpler and more believable lies, and some lies are so big that it's impossible to get anyone to believe them. Oh my god, I love this rule. Sometimes I can feel like such a dick as a DM when a player rolls really good but tells a terrible lie. I either have to dumb down my NPCs who wouldn't be dumb because they rolled a natural 20, or try and come up with something that makes sense of how this lie works when really, it doesn't. A lot of my players make up really silly lies, and a lot of my NPCs are fairly smart and good at what they do. I love the failure state giving bonuses to further lies. I feel like trying to navigate situations around deception can be very difficult, and it should be, and this solidifies it. Feint. With a misleading flourish, you leave an opponent unprepared for your real attack. Attempt a deception check against that opponent's perception DC. It's interesting how much you can do when your fighter subclass's main attraction isn't just doing cool fighting moves. This kind of reminds me of Aim from 5th edition, but for a melee attack. This is honestly just such a cool roguish ability that's for everyone because deception and rogues just go hand in hand, and this is just a really cool combat deception. I love it. Diplomacy. You influence others through negotiation and flattery. As an American, changing persuasion to diplomacy almost feels like it's undertaking British slang. In D&D land, we've got persuasion, we've got flashlights, we've got trunks, and we've got diapers. But over in Pathfinder, we've got diplomacy, we've got torches, boots, and nappies. Gather information. You canvass local markets, taverns, and gathering places and attempt to learn about a specific individual or topic. There's something about this that just gives me the vibe of a Guy Ritchie movie. You're just in a pub buying people drinks, trying to get information out of people without them realizing that you're trying to get information out of them. I'm still not a huge fan of deceiving my players. I don't think that I would use this as a crit fail state. I would rather harm them monetarily. Instead of giving them incorrect information, I would make them have to spend extra money on getting drinks for someone to get information, only to get none. Make an impression. With 1 minute of conversation, during which you engage in charismatic overtures, flattery, and other acts of goodwill, you seek to make a good impression on someone to make them temporarily agreeable. Good impressions, or bad impressions on a critical failure, last for only the current social interaction unless the GM decides otherwise. This is almost like the Friends cantrip, but less obvious and with more time required. I'm also curious if people have ever used this to specifically make bad impressions, like as a distraction. I do like that states of success revolve around the different attitudes, which are a great tool for the GM, especially new ones. Request. You can make a request of a creature that's friendly or helpful to you. You must couch the request in terms that the target would accept given their current attitude towards you. Some requests are unsavory or impossible, and even a helpful NPC would never agree to them. I'm a really big fan of the way that this is worded and how common it is for these rules to give the DM an out and not be beholden to the wants of their player. While learning Pathfinder has taught me that DM is a lot friendlier to new players, it's also got a lot of writing built into it that is very helpful to new GMs. I feel like a lot of time the critical fails are more of a suggestion than something I need to follow. Intimidation. You bend others to your will using threats. Like and subscribe or else! Coerce. With threats either veiled or overt, you attempt to bully a creature into doing what you want. You must spend at least 1 minute of conversation with a creature you can see that can either see or sense you. I feel so bad for anyone getting intimidated in Pathfinder, oh my god. A couple of seconds of bullying feels like an eternity, but a full 60 of just constant bullying? My next character in Pathfinder is gonna be a therapist because, oh my god. Whew, mental health is important. Be kind to each other. Demoralize. With a sudden shout, a well-timed taunt, or a cutting put down, you can shake an enemy's resolve. If the target does not understand the language you are speaking or not speaking a language, you take a -4 circumstance penalty to the check. I love that even if they can't understand you, they can still be demoralized by you. This means to me that even if you do speak the same language, you could say whatever the fuck you want for a -4 penalty to try and demoralize someone. You're handsome, you're loved, and I hope life opens up so many paths for you, you cute little bunny. I mean, it's a -4, but it still gives you a chance. Lore. You have specialized information on a narrow topic. As for actions, there's really not much that you can do with lore outside of some general ones, but we're gonna cover the general actions in the third video of skills. Lore is kind of just too specific to really have anything going on in it. I can see myself having a lot of fun with a character who specializes in lore and having a campaign based around that specific lore and just being like a super savant expert in everything that we need to know. Okay, so as we know, this is going to be a 3-part series and we've just finished part 1. As always, I appreciate you very much, especially if you're listening to me right now and you made it this far into the video. Please keep the comments coming, enlighten me, teach me, tell me where you want me to go next. But that's it, folks. We're done. We're done. Don't forget to leave a like and a subscribe, and that's it. There's no more video here. So until I see you all again, be well, eat well, sleep well, and dream well. I'll catch y'all next time.